I think it's ready.
Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, that we are actually at this man Trey Chambers' inaugural podcast. I'm just sort of filling in for a minute at least to do the introductory audio and warming myself up. And at some point, probably about now, we're going to cue in the intro music. So, music, please.
All right, you ready? All right, let's do the damn thing. All right, welcome to Eternally Bored inaugural podcast. I'm your host, Trey Chambers. This is Charles Washington.
Co-host.
Co-host. Just a couple of quick things. We had some technical difficulties, so we're actually recording this first episode on an iPhone 7. But future podcasts, we will have a more professional setup. Sorry about the quality, but iPhone 7 seems to be doing a pretty decent job.
I don't think they're going to notice much at all because really most of the stuff on YouTube is already recorded on an iPhone of some type, especially if it's getting a lot of clicks.
That is actually a great point. All right, so just a real quick thing, a little bit about how I'd like this podcast to be presented is I kind of want to do a podcast about board gaming that tackles like some of the more serious issues. I mean, there's a million different great board game podcasts out there, but it seems like most of them don't want to talk about any of the heavier issues that are in the industry. They kind of skirt around it, but I think a lot of these conversations are important to have. So I'd like this to be one of those places where we can have an open discussion about the heavier issues.
And, since we currently don't have any marketing at the moment, we don't really have a need to censor ourselves.
Yeah.
So we will just go ahead and move from there. I'm, of course, Charles Washington. I'm one of the co-hosts, and behind the scenes, who you may or may not be able to hear at some point, is Ian. Yes. Ian is going to be our technical and our audio guy and our video guy. Ian is just our guy in
Producer,
general, right?
Director, everything.
Yes, these are his lovely mics and equipment providing. I guess he'd probably just be the man behind the magic.
Indeed. And I'm Trey Chambers. A little bit about me as far as the industry goes. I do design board games. I have Argent, the Consortium, which is my only release game currently out of print because it's sold out. Yay. But it's going to be reprinted soon. That's by Level 99. And then I have another game coming out by Level 99 called Imperial, and a game called Harvest by TMG. So check those out. But enough self-promotion. Basically going to start each episode just kind of talking about the games we've been playing recently, and then we'll get into the more serious topic of the day, du jour.
So I guess since we're going to talk about games that we have been playing as of late, I guess where do you think we should start off? You want to go first? And
yeah, I'll run down my list, and then you can run down yours, and I'm sure we're gonna have some crossover here. The first one I wanted to talk about was Adrenaline. I've heard a lot about this game, and it really intrigued me. It's basically kind of a first-person shooter, the board game. Technically third-person shooter, but who's counting? It's and it really encapsulates that really well. And I kind of really thought it would be Ameritrashy, but it's really not. It's more like a Euro game because you're like making all these calculations with cubes and things, and then like getting these cards which give you special abilities or a gun. That and it's just a very, very faithful translation, I think, of a video game third-person shooter to a board game.
But it is a Euro game, though, because it's designed by, Philippe Ninak at Chex Game Editions, if I remember correctly.
It's a CG game, right?
Right. So, I mean, I guess you have do you feel Vlada's fingerprints over it?
Yeah, I feel like he was the developer, sure, and Vlada likes to do, like, the Euro / Ameritrash kind of games where he mixes in those elements. But this one definitely weighs more towards Euro, way more than I thought it would. But it is a very excellent game. So don't be scared away if you don't like Euros, because it doesn't necessarily feel like a Euro. It still feels Ameritrashy because you're like shooting people with guns, right? So thematically, it's totally more in that realm, and of course, it's direct player conflict. But it definitely has a very like Euro mechanics behind it.
Okay. Well, how many players did you play with on your run through, or your run throughs, I guess?
We played 5. It was a little long, but let me tell you, so my biggest issue with the game is actually the guns, because the iconography is decently good once you learn it, but it's a lot. Like, every gun is totally different. So, and it didn't include player aids that show all the weapons, so I actually printed some out. So hopefully next time I play with new players, it'll be a lot smoother. But Every time like there were new guns on the board, the game just came to a screeching halt while we like try to figure out what they do.
So, sounds like explaining someone Race to the Galaxy for the first time.
It was exactly like that.
Okay.
It's like, what do these cards do in Race to the Galaxy? But it's the same thing. You're like, what does this gun do? And then you have to take several seconds to figure it out. And then everybody at the table wants to see it because they want to know, do they want to go pick it up later? Or they want to know if it's going to be shooting at them, what do they need to calculate? So everybody needs that information, and they didn't include player aids for all the players. So
Well, if it's a first-person shooter, I guess things are just randomly spawning around the board, or
yeah, there's basically you can pick up the guns at the spawn points. So you just go to the spawn point, and there's 3 cards at each spawn point, and you can pick up whichever gun you want. So, it's a very, very good game, very intense, and very thematic. So yeah, so that's Adrenaline. Definitely check it out. Next, I want to talk about Terra Mystica, the Gaia project, which is the kind of sequel to Terra Mystica, basically Terra Mystica in space. It's a prototype, so I can't really talk about specific mechanics or anything, but I can just give you my kind of overview of the game. If you like Terra Mystica, you will love this game. It's Terra Mystica in space, it really is that. But it is even more complicated than Terra Mystica by an order of magnitude.
Joyce.
Yeah, right. Half the audience is like, I'm never playing this game. Okay, great. Yeah, it's like Terra Mystica takes like 15 to 30 minutes to teach. This game will take twice that to teach to new players. I would never play this game with someone who has not already played Terra Mystica because all the Terra Mystica rules plus layers and layers more
that you can't discuss.
Yeah, that I can't discuss.
And you didn't
take my word for it.
And you didn't invite me to the prototype testing.
Hey,
well,
man,
I was
it's not my
invited the
prototype.
first 2 times. What happened to the final time where you finally actually got it played and the person who had access to the prototype came over? Why was I not there?
Well, it is a 4-player game, and it's not my game, and I didn't do the inviting, and he already had 4, so don't take it personally.
You know, this man has constantly been a thorn in my side. Maybe one day we'll come on, and he will be able to come on to this podcast, and we can discuss some of the conflicts and reasons why my irritation is very high now. Of course, I actually played Terra Mystica in the league I have since it first started.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, if in general, if you can say something about the number of, can you say something about the number of races that are available?
It's comparable, yeah. I think they do the same thing where it's like 2 colors, like there's a race on either side of a player board, and you can choose. And by the way, Charles is one of the best Terra Mystica players on the planet, so I'm glad he was not there.
No.
So watch this guy on Snellman.
No, I'm not. Do not look at me up on Snellman.
Look him up.
I have not. No, I've definitely been a disappointment to myself on Snellman. I'm trying. I used to write for quite a bit, but.
But also, Terra Mystica app just came out. Definitely get that. I don't really play a lot of board gaming apps because I'm like, well, why wouldn't I play an app that's made to be a video game? Why would I play a board game app? But the Terra Mystica app is amazing. It's so good. Check it out.
So what are the differences on the Terra Mystica app with that on Snellman? Because I know Snellman is basically sort of a input system, so to speak. Definitely it's very good at doing its chess clock things, but there's not really a lot of graphics at all. You probably could have programmed this very easily. It does get the message of what is going on in the board game itself across very well.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. What would a Snellman player? Why would they want to buy the Terra Mystica app?
Mainly the graphic upgrade. I mean, everything else you can do on Snellman, and actually, there's some things I like better about Snellman in that the timer on Snellman, most people play with a 24-hour timer. On the Terra Mystica app, it defaults to 72 hours. So it's like, if someone's being really slow taking their turn, it can be like 3 days before you take your next turn, or even longer than that if like the next person also takes a long time. So I really hate their 72-hour timer. But other than that, that's like my one main complaint. Everything else is very faithful.
Well, definitely, I would like to see these Terra Mystica dwellings sprout up from the ground. So I guess we can talk about one of the games I've been playing lately.
Sure, yeah.
All right, so one of the games that I picked up recently was Yokohama, which is by Hirashi Hayashi. I can't ever remember.
I should have wrote down the
Yeah, I
designer
should have wrote
names.
down the designer names.
Next
but
episode. Next episode would be much better.
But definitely, he's from the man who created Sail to India. He also created Trains, which is very popular from AEG. This is a release from Tasty Minstrel, who just recently finished their profit sharing program. And I received it as a Kickstarter backer before. And definitely, it is a game where I like to look up at it as sort of a fixed Istanbul. There are a number of things that are going on, but you are basically on every turn doing 6 main actions with a chance to do a few additional actions at the beginning or the end of your main action phase. And the placements, it incorporates a number of games. It has like the selection of Splendor, which is in its initial placement phases. Then it has sort of the movement of Istanbul, and it has a lot of the area selection and action type of balances of a number of other Euro and economic games. And of course, it's not of course, it also has a bit of point salad mechanism. So the in-game scoring seems to be sort of Fellian in nature, where you're just scoring for a number of different angles, and there can be some rapid, not shifts that you didn't see coming, but you just weren't counting on because there was so many ways to score in the game. So, it has a combination of things where someone could be doing set collections of countries and they'll score a lot at the end of that. Some other person could have been focusing on the church track or the customs track and basically scoring from that. It also has a lot of blocking in the game itself and technologies that allow you to make it around the blocking. Did you get a chance to play it?
Yeah. I played Yokohama. It's a very good, solid Euro game. It's kind of like an amalgamation of all these different mechanics you see in other games. Closest to Uwe Rosenberg game, or Uwe Rosenberg game. Said Uwe for years and is like, oh, it's Uwe. Oops. Well, but
it's German VW.
Yeah. But and I love those games. I mean, they're all right there, right? So if you like that style of Euro game, then I would definitely go for that. If you're a Feld fan, you'll probably like it. I'm not a huge Feld fan, but I'm not a huge fan of his new games. I'm a huge fan of Feld's older games. But if you like those and you like Uwe Rosenberg, definitely check it out. See, Herbaceous, right? This is your game from Stephen Finn?
Yeah, Dr. Finn's game,
Finn,
Stephen Finn, and I cannot remember the rest of the people on it. But definitely, this game was sort of a small Kickstarter that I did a long time ago, and I believe I've played it before, but Trey played it for the first time this week. It definitely has many similarities to Biblios. You can feel it's nice when a designer develops a niche for themselves and they're able to make variations that are actually good and unique standing of that initial niche that they're in, and they don't go too far off the rails like Carl Chuduk has done, so to speak. But this is a game that's very simple. It's easy to teach. It's set collection with a communal set, and you have a private set of things that you are collecting, and you're basically sort of having a public set collection race. None of the material that or the plants that you're collecting, or you're basically planting herbs in a herb garden, and you're trying to match them. Some of them are pairs, some of them are unique individual ones, some of them are all the different types of herbs that are available. And basically you're going around and just trying to collect your sets. And there's a little press your luck mechanic, but it's all depending on the player. So the player interaction in this game is immense.
I would actually say that's what the game is. It's press your luck set collection, because if you don't grab your set and you wait for it to get a little juicier, but someone else takes the cards that you needed, then you're just out of luck. So I would say that's like the central mechanic, is like pressure luck set collection in a filler. It's very good. Dr. Finn is just really good at these shorter borderline filler type games take a little longer than maybe 15-20 minutes, but not too much longer than that. So excellent game. I really liked it. Let's talk about Ponzi Scheme. Because we had some interesting reactions to this game.
Just drank for this. Go ahead.
So Ponzi Scheme, just briefly, is basically also set collection, but you're doing it by like basically also pressing your luck, because you're taking loans essentially, and you have to pay the loans back in several turns later, and they always are more money to pay back. So, and then you have to keep paying them back later in the game. So you're just kicking the can down the road, and you're just like borrowing more and more money, kind of like modern governments do. So you're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and you're taking loans to pay other loans, and eventually someone goes bankrupt. When someone goes bankrupt, they are out. They can't win the game, and then the surviving players count up their victory points, which are determined by their set collection. So you want to like specialize in colors, because the more you get of one color, it's triangular scoring, and
1, 3, 6, 10, 15, etc.
And the way you get more than 3, like you can just pull up to 3 from the game, but then after that you have to like hostile take over them from other players by basically offering them a bribe that they either have to match and give the money back to you, or accept the bribe and give you one of their shares. So really interesting game, but
and there's
mixed
also
reactions.
And there's also random points in the game where you just lose the share you have the most of, that you spent all this money to collect. And then there's a backroom dealing of trades where secret money is getting exchanged back and forth between people. So you never really know exactly what the value is. And if someone can just sort of jump on a weakened player, because they can pay money to protect their shares, and then someone can just swoop in right behind and offer something that they can't pay and steal the exact same share from them.
Right.
This game is absolute Ameritrash, okay? That's, and I mean this in the worst trashy American type of day. I mean, type of way. I mean, you know, like a porn star just got bit by a shark in the ocean. For whatever model production, that level of Ameritrash, that feeling that you just got there, is definitely how this game has felt to me and a few of my other people. Maybe I'm not quite as ruthless. I mean, other people, you liked it a lot, right?
Yeah, I would say it's a good game, but it's a fragile game. And if the people aren't playing at a similar level, the first person that goes bankrupt can happen very quickly. And you know, you might like that might be fine for some players, because some players like unpredictable endings. But I think for others that prefer more control in their games, that it's just too fragile of a system. So I would say, like, if you enjoy games that are kind of unpredictable and like can throw you curveballs, then I think you would like Ponzi Scheme. If you also like kind of economic manipulation games. Other than that, you probably won't like it. If you like a lot of control in games and you don't like surprises, then I would say probably give it a pass.
You know, there's some games where sitting behind the new player is to your immense advantage. Well, in the game that I played, a Ponzi Scheme, the first one, everyone was a new player. I didn't feel any advantage. I played a second game, and, you know, I was like, all right, I understand what's going on, but I still feel sort of like a new player. I don't even know where the new player is, because this guy's played before, and they're not giving me an advantage, but they're messing up too. I watched the third game, and I was like, you know, this game always makes you feel like a new player. It's, you know, I guess if you like to go and experience something new all the time and just not have much control over it, this might be a game for you.
Yeah.
But
I really liked it. I thought it was super interesting, but it's definitely not a game for everybody.
Oh, but I will say this: we've discussed 2 tasty minstrel games today. This is definitely the most overproduced game I've ever seen for air. It comes with a very nice leather case. It comes with the thickest cardboard on a screen that you can have. However, you know, they could have just solved their problem by printing money with one side that was just blank or universal, and another side that had money on it. You wouldn't even need the screen.
It didn't need to be quite as blinged out as it is, but if you like components, the components are super excellent. I'm not sure this game needed to have awesome components, because it's really just an economic game, but you know, components are great. Like, I mean, TMG always does amazing components. So, and this is no exception. And maybe that's their thing. They're like, well, we're not going to have this game have bad components because all of our other games have amazing components. So they went the extra mile there.
Yeah, we'll have to do a TMG episode sometime in the future.
For sure. There's 3 more games I want to talk about. Let's just run through them real fast because we kind of need to get to the topic du jour. Arkwright. Have you played Arkwright?
No, I'll watch you explain it.
Yeah, it was like a 5-6 hour game. It's a really, really incredibly long Euro style game. It is really good. And similar to the Colonist that I also played recently, Colonist is amazing, but is also like 5 or 6 hours, so I'm not sure how often I'd want to play that. But Arkwright, I felt was maybe a little too complex. I don't know. It actually wasn't that complex. My main problem was the length. I think if the game was shorter, I'd be all over it, because you don't really do that many actions in the game, and yet it takes forever. I felt the same way about Vinhost. It's like you do 12 actions in 3 hours. In Arkwright, you take like 30 actions in 6 hours. Like, it's a lot, and the bookkeeping is also crazy, so it might be better suited for an app.
It looked almost like a 4X economic exploration game.
Yeah.
If all 4X's were just for economics, or 4E game,
Yeah.
whatever.
It is the sandbox exploration economic game. Like, you can do whatever, and the freedom is nice, and the mechanics are interesting, but a little long for my taste. So I actually sold my copy to another player who really liked it. But excellent game, just not quite in my wheelhouse.
And while he was playing that, I played 2 games of Terraforming Mars. So
2 games, Terraforming.
continue.
So Nippon is the other game that I played. What's Your Game games are always, very solid mechanically, but usually just not as replayable enough for me to keep them. Nippon is kind of the same way, but Nippon for me was just too harsh. Like, I like harsh games, but this one was like too much. It's basically area control. I mean, it has like all What's Your Game games, it has tons of different mechanisms just kind of thrown in there. But the main one is area control, and the area control is so brutal that I just didn't enjoy my play of it. Because, like, someone can knock you out of a spot and cost you tons of victory points, and you have no real recourse and no real way to prevent that from happening.
But the most brutality in that game came directly from, like, what players were doing to you, right? It wasn't like events in the game that were coming up or causing. It's just people saw what you had and wanted it.
Yeah. If you like your Euro games feeling like war games, then you will like Nippon. But I'm like, I love war games and I love Euro games, but I want them to be separate, unless it's a hybrid, which if it's a hybrid, I expect it to have some combat. But this is like strictly a Euro game. It's not a Ameritrash. It's not a hybrid. It's a Euro game, but it plays like a war game where you're just like smacking each other left and right, and it was not for me. But if you don't mind that in Euro games, go for it. It's definitely solid mechanically. Lastly, Star Trek Panic. Why don't you talk about Star Trek Panic, Jones?
Star Trek Panic is Castle Panic, but it has Star Trek themes in it, and I would say overall it's a little bit better than Castle Panic, just because this is a USAopoly game, so you sort of get what you want. They're in charge of a number of the wonderful rethemes of different things, whether you like them or not. But this one, it seems like someone who really enjoyed the original series of Star Trek went in, and they just did their best to adapt the system in Castle Panic to the Star Trek original theme. And I think they have some successes. The missions, every mission in Star Trek Panic is going to be like, you can just read through the cards, and it's sort of like you're going through a excellent synopsis of whatever episode of Star Trek they utilized for a mission. And they pretty honestly, recreate how the Enterprise itself got out of that predicament, and inside the gameplay into the Castle Planet itself. I mean, you might fly to the starbase, you might have to get a certain, like the Trouble with Tribbles, for example, you have to beam an enemy aboard a Klingon ship.
Thematically, the game is solid. If you're a big Star Trek fan and you like co-ops, I would say definitely check it out. I'm not a huge co-op fan, so a co-op has to be really interesting to win me over in the first place, and I do not like the mechanics of this game. I just felt like the decisions are very obvious most of the time. Better than Castle Panic. Castle Panic is a super simplistic game. I don't recommend that for anyone but families. But to to me, just the interest level wasn't there. But again, I don't like co-ops. You like co-ops, you like Star Trek, definitely check it out. Don't play with more than 3 players.
Yeah, it plays up to 6. I'd probably say
Don't.
4 is the best. I've played a few games of 4, and the 3 would even work fairly well. Downtime is definitely an issue.
Yeah, don't play with 5 or 6. Um,
But anyways,
yeah, let's get to the main topic because we're running out of time, and I mean I love talking about games, but what I'd like to talk about today is race in wargaming as far as like the industry. I hope to do another episode about this topic where we talk about more at a personal level, but today I'd just like to talk about how it is in the industry. And the first kind of prompt that I'd like to discuss with Charles is how do we think the industry is doing as far as the racial representation, as in currently?
well, I guess a lot of that would just depend on what side of the pond the game is being originated from and where its design is coming. I think if you look in America, I mean, we're just a little bit more aware of this. We've, in our media as well as in our board games, we put more racial diversity, and sometimes racial diversity is sort of minor, so to speak. I mean, there might just be one person who is actually, you know, miscellaneously brown, so to cover a number of different demographics. I'm like, is this a light skinned black person? Is this a Hispanic person? And could this be an Indian person? Maybe even Asiatic to some extent. And then in other games, you just sort of have them, mostly like European games and definitely Japanese games if they care. You just have more of a homogenous sort of racial display.
Yeah. So you're saying America does better as far as diversity?
We do a little bit better, and we even do better like when we're bringing games over. So for instance, Coup is a very good example of a game that it started out as a basic French game, and I believe everybody was French lords, so to speak. And the art was pretty terrible in Coup, the original version, but they brought it over to America, and honestly, they're just doing everything in their power to put someone different. If you look at Coup, it's sort of like a cultural explosion compared to any other board game that's or major selling game that you'll see. I mean, I can literally recognize like 6 different ethnic origins just in the 12 player cards. Of course, there's the one thing that is always going to be sort of a emblematic of our hobby is you want the people who are, and I can understand the publishers on this a bit, you want the people who are in your hobby to feel comfortable. So, there's never, this hobby is generally ran, published, created by white males, and it has, sort of been, well...
Getting more diverse, though.
Getting a little bit more diverse. And in terms of, you have the white American male, then you have the European male who's, obviously going to sort of more identify with their country of origin. But, you see that when it comes from that standpoint, a game like Coup is going to be more of an exception, whereas you'll have a game even by, like Uwe Rosenberg, so to speak, where, you have a whole bunch of dwarves and they all look the same. There will be maybe one woman dwarf, but, for the most part, it'll be like a father, the wife, and then all the sons and no daughters. So
not a lot of female dwarves in general.
Not a lot of female dwarves, and then they're all going to be like you're not going to change. You'll have Caverna has 7 different colors of tiles, but they're all just the same generic European type dwarf.
I would definitely say publishers are getting better about that, and the industry is getting more diverse as far as like representation in games. I still think we have a long way to go. I do find it upsetting is like whenever there is diversity in a game, like sometimes there's backlash. It's like, why is there diversity? It's like, who cares? Like you don't want people to complain when there's not diversity, but you're going to complain when there is diversity in a game. I mean, think about the logic there. Like, there's nothing wrong with diversity, right?
Right, and I mean, you would think that would be more accepted here, but obviously it's sort of like the general world is at the moment becoming more xenophobic, and ironically we have more communication than ever. From a technological standpoint, we're becoming just as xenophobic as we were during the World War era. But you know, in board games, that sort of gets reflected in terms of like you know, people, I believe, and you know, one of the things that we always have talked about is who is ultimately like responsible for like the diversity in a board game. And you know, I've always thought that it was responsibilities of the publishers. And you know, you are a designer. How much does the designer's influence have over like what the publisher puts in? It's sort of like for Argent, for instance, you have, you know, you basically have yourself as a designer. You have the owner of Level 99, Brad Talton, and you have the artist who is, what's her name? Nokomento. All, I guess, involved in this. How did that work with you in terms of getting characters designed?
Well, I think pretty much any situation between a designer and a publisher is going to be different. But in the case of Level 99, while my input was welcome, it wasn't really asked for as far as like the art design. He already had his characters in mind, so he just put in whatever he wanted, and you know, and it came out great. And you know, not to brag too much, but Level 99 is very diverse as far as like the characters and race, gender, whatever. So I really respect that about that company, and you know, Brad's a great guy, and I'm sure if I asked him like, hey, I think we should have this character, he probably would have done it. But designers usually just focus on mechanics. You know, some designers are artists, and obviously their input is going to be, you know, they're going to have more say over art and things like that. But I think most designers just mainly do mechanics. So it is, like Charles said, it's mostly publishers that make those decisions as far as like what direction it's going to take, or they might give their artist free reign, and in that case it would be the artist. You know, it just depends. Like all the situations are different, but I would say publishers probably have the most control over representation in their games.
Yeah, and then you know, publishers are going to try to sell to their target audience, and you know, obviously, as stated before, the target audience is going to be males primarily, and then you know, it's probably going to be males, then minority males, and then you know, like majority females, and then I guess minority females at the very bottom of the totem pole, and you know what, you know, the minorities themselves will be, you know, if they're going to even think about it. So, like I said, in America we're a little bit more diverse, so we're probably catering most of our target audience for most publishers is going to be very similar to the movies. They're going to go for 3. They're going to go for you know, obviously white. You're going to go for black because black culture tends to sell internationally, and then you're going to go for some type of Asian, generally going to be of Chinese, Japanese descent. Going to forget the fact that Russia and Korea, India and Thailand are all in Asia, but we're going to concentrate on the big country and the one that makes all the good TVs and video games. But and you know, the publishers are going to try to sell to them, and
right. But you know, I would still say publishers are getting better, and I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg thing though. Like the hobby has certainly gotten more diverse over time. And are the publishers just responding to that, or like did the publishers decide, hey, let's make our games more diverse, and that's brought more people in? I suspect it's both. So those are influence, and they're compounding influences. I think as publishers make their games more diverse, the hobby will continue to diversify. So I'm excited about that.
Right, and you can even see it in terms of like, you know, like for instance, if I look at Codenames, the original Codenames. And then you go back to Codenames Pictures. These are the ones from CGE. There's also Codenames Adult, but actually we can even include that as well, or Codenames Deep Undercover. The first Codenames was all like just catered to white males, right? And it had females and males, and most of them were of European origin. Then you have the
Sexy Spy, the female spy.
Yes,
very sexy.
Then you have the Deep Undercover, and that just includes like a whole bunch of different people, but they're all more or less questionable. I think it has a pimp or something like that in it as well.
Deep
And
undercover.
yeah, they're not really in control. But then Codename Pictures comes out, and then that also continues with like the racial diversification. And it's subtle stuff like that where you feel as if like the designer and the publisher was like, okay, we have a hit, we've sold to our core audience. Now we need to broaden it as we go on. And one thing that people really like is someone that sort of looks like themselves, especially from like I guess one of the things that we were talking about before, who notices,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, I'm a black male in America. This is the kind of stuff that I just look at just every day in everything that I watch, see, or do. There's not really a moment when I don't think about like racial diversification. Just even in casual things that I'm watching. I mean, I was watching a basketball game yesterday. I was looking for black people at a Utah Jazz game who weren't actually working at the game. It was a fun game.
Yeah, good luck.
It is very difficult to play. Shout out to Level 99. I think they're also in Utah, correct?
No, they're in New Mexico.
New Mexico. Oh well, my fault.
One of those
the other mountainous western states. I'm an American. I was raised in America. I'm terrible at geography.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess the other question I wanted to ask, like, how important do you think that representation is, as far as games? Like, is it just a minor thing? Is like all this hoopla about it over nothing, or do you think it's important, and then why?
I would probably say that the representation is very important, but it's one of those things. Like, obviously, when we're looking at games, we're looking for good systems, things that we can play. If the game is really good, as long as it's not from like a Klans member, I'm probably going to try to continue to play it. As long as the designer itself doesn't make something so objectionable that I refuse to play anything from them. And that's almost non-existent in board game designers. I mean, I don't think we have any Bill O'Reillys going around. Be careful what you drink at conventions. No. It's been a pretty bad 5 years for anyone named Bill in positions of power and respect. So Cosby,
if you go back to the 90s,
O'Reilly, yes, it's
Clinton too.
Clinton as well, yes. But anyway, sorry about that. Just remembering my bills. But as how important is the representation? I think it's just good to have a little bit of diversity. I realize that some people, you will lose some people because you are overly diverse, but you will gain a lot more. I mean, you put a board game on a table, someone sees it's very inclusive. They might be like, oh, I can take this to my office. I can, pretty much play this anywhere and help grow the hobby to a number of people. And I, definitely, in addition to, helping to grow the hobby, when someone sees that an effort's been made, like a new person, a new player, I think you have a better chance of retaining them, because we have two things: we have to get the exposure out as board gamers, and then we have to actually retain the people we get and get them coming back.
I think that a lot of white folks, such as myself, what they might not get about the issue is well, it doesn't matter what color people are. It doesn't matter race. So why do we care? Why should we care if a game's diverse or not? It doesn't have to be, because it doesn't matter. And I think where they're coming from is that they've maybe always been surrounded by media that they didn't have to take note about diversity, because it was catered towards them from the drop. And so they almost kind of maybe take it for granted, not knowingly, but they're just oh, it's not a big deal. Who cares? It could all be white people and it doesn't affect anything, or it could all be black people and it doesn't affect anything. Right, but they've never been in a situation where there was no one representing them in their media. So I think they could, just in general, have some more empathy there, which I think is always a good thing. And, just not have the knee-jerk reaction oh, they're forcing this on us, they're forcing diversity. But it's not really about that. It's just about having a diverse community and fostering that community, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's not like anyone's forcing it, but we do want it because it's a positive thing.
Right, and it's also good to see, like, I run a very Trey and I both live in Houston. I run a very diverse, you know, gaming group publicly, and you can just. It's interesting when you have a number of different minority women from like 4 different minorities playing a game, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, there's someone who looks like me in this game." I feel like it's the first. They like literally go and point it out. So seeing that, you feel the need to have it, to have the diversity be a little bit, just more prevalent in general. Because the board game community is still very homogenous, I think. I mean, this is one thing, as you go to a lot of conventions, Trey, right?
Right.
And,
well, actually, I'd like to talk about the next episode, that it's going to focus on more, like, personal level. But, yeah, I would like to talk about conventions and the homogeneity of the board game community. I mean, and it is, but does it, like, that shouldn't determine whether or not our games are diverse, right? Because we are getting more diverse as an industry. And so I think fostering that growth can only help the industry. So.
But definitely, I agree with you on that. And I think that, I guess for another time, because I think we're actually reaching sort of the end of our podcast.
Yeah, we went a little long, but I hope the conversation was interesting, and I hope you'll come back when we have working mics and maybe a better camera. Although the iPhone 7 camera. Very nice.
It is very nice, and this mic is very beautiful. It will, hopefully you'll hear my dulcet tone next time. So on behalf of Ian and myself, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the podcast and give Trey the final word.
All right, yeah, and thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Please give us feedback. This is our first episode, and I'm sure we have a million things we need to correct and make better, so I'm going to have this up on YouTube and a website, eternallybored.com. I'm sure it'll be on Twitter, Facebook. I'll be in all the social medias eventually, and I'll post announcements and links down below.
It'll be huge.
Huge, the hugest gaming podcast.
Yeah, it's like the size of my hands. Sorry.
All right. Well, until next time. This has been Eternally Bored. We're eternally bored, so you don't have to be.